Hi, I'm Marcia Lehman, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. Today we'll be pruning a small shrub that's commonly called sweet pepper bush. The botanical name is Clethra alnefolia. It is a native plant. Frankly, it doesn't need a lot of pruning, but it does like to produce suckers. So the bulk of the pruning is done at the base, removing suckers, taking out the 4 Ds, dead, disease, damaged, dysfunctional, and then, if necessary, pruning for shape, not for size. It can get 5 to 10 feet tall. It is a native plant that does well in the shade, and it has lovely blooms, as you'll see on the handout. So there happens to be 3 of them here in a row. They're planted 2.5 feet apart, maybe 2.5 to 3 feet apart. So it may look like one big mass, but when I get this first one done, you'll then be able to see what it looks like before and after. So let me put down the handout and come down. And the first thing I need to do if I'm going to find suckers is to pull back some of this mulch to clean out, to find those suckers. Now, there also happens to be a climbing hydrangea that's growing on this little rock wall in front of us. So it may look like I may occasionally snip a piece of hydrangea instead if I can't figure out where it's coming from. So here I've got a sucker that is coming out of the ground and then crossing through the shrub. And actually, I think that was a piece of the hydrangea. But it was growing through the middle of it, so we can't have that. So I want to take off any of the really spindly stuff around the bottom. I'm looking for suckers. And I'm also looking for anything that wants to come up and it curves back into the center, which may be hard for you to see in this video because we are in the shade. And so pruning for shape, I want to keep this somewhat upright, so the really low growing branches are the ones that I'm coming after, and the ones that, as I mentioned earlier, are growing through the center of the plant. That needs to come off. Again, being one of these pokey little shrubs, you definitely want to wear your eye protection. I'm wearing gloves. And there's a little bit of dead wood on here. That may be just a result of the cold blast we had about a month ago. But I am focused on looking for suckers, taking off things that are growing through the center, and I've got one that just doesn't want to stand up, so it's growing out really flat along the ground. And when I take out that's a pretty sizable chunk of plant. Now, I mentioned they don't need a lot of pruning, but the good news is they respond well to pruning, right? This is dormant, so when it comes out of dormancy, it'll put out new growth, and all the blooms are on new growth. Pruning stimulates growth, so they respond well to pruning with even more flowers. So, okay, so yep, I've got some hydrangea climbing through, some climbing hydrangea climbing through my sweet pepper bush. So I've taken, I don't know, 6 or 8, maybe 7 snips. Oh, that was a dead one. I just brushed against it and it broke. So that's a good sign. That's the hydrangea coming through. More hydrangea coming through. So frankly, I think I'm done with this shrub. I'm looking at the rest of this and the things that I'm touching. If it bends, it's not dead. If it goes crunch, well, yep, like that. That was dead. So sometimes you just run down along them and see what gives. Okay, let me pause, and I'm going to shift over to this next one, and maybe between the two of these we can get a really good view. We've come in closer with the camera to try and show you the base of this once it's been cleaned up a little bit. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 major stems. I need to figure out, well, that is a sucker growing over here from the side. We found a couple of these, but this is what the shrub now looks like. So we've got good airflow, the shape is fine, it has a little bit of a lean, probably looking for just a little more sunlight. But we're now going to move on to this adjacent plant, and I'll pull back some of this mulch because I think this one has even more suckers than the first one. So now that I've gotten a little better at distinguishing the hydrangea from the Clethra, this is clearly Clethra because I can tell by the spent flower blooms, but this stem comes off of a sucker that is easily 6 to 8 inches away from the clump. So unless you're trying to grow a great big long hedgerow of these things, that's what needs to be removed. Now that's the, here's another sucker on the back side you can't see, but it's also about 6 inches away from the clump. So then we have this one. This is on the clump. Comes with this stem. Yep, that's dead. I'm sure you heard that crunch. Let's see. Not sure what that is. And then we've got, at some point with all these stems, you may need to untangle the plant to figure out where you're going. Let's see if we can zoom in here to the base of this. Between the hydrangea that is growing through here, we've got a nice, it actually looks like this plant put up a sucker or two that became like a second clump very close by. So these 4 stems come off of one clump, and then the rest of these come off of what was probably the original plant. But it's got some low, well, that's dead. That's dead. This one looks dead. Yep. And okay, I'm following this one, and I see that one growing out and in through the hydrangea, so that's going to come out. And yep, it had the spent flowers on the end. So now we've got, this one wants to wrap around. So now that sucker is 6 inches out from the clump. So now that original clump of 4 is down to 3. Here we come with this one. Here's the second major stem of this one. And then we've got 2 more, and ooh, these 2 want to rub. And one of them is going to have to go. And I think it's going to be the one that wants to grow out that way. This one wants to come up a little straighter, so I'm going to go as low as I can. It's still a hand pruner cut. We'll take that out. And now, again, we're good on airflow and sunshine. And I think we're done with the second one. So if we can look at the 2 we've pruned and then compare it to the third one here, I think you can see that the 2 we pruned are a little thinner than this one. But this one will need the same attention. We won't go through this a third time, but it also has a little bit of dead stuff on it, which you can just break off with your fingers. And if it bends, well, then it's not dead. If it breaks, then it's clearly dead. And so that's the Clethra, or the sweet pepper bush. Again, it's really pretty. The flowers, as you can see from the spent flowers, are rather long. They are white. It blooms later in the summer. And as I mentioned, it is a native plant that does well in the shade. So that's it for this specimen today. Hope you learned something, and we thank you for joining us.